AM 560. The Answer.
Today, 15 recipients of the Nobel Prize in Economics released a letter in support of the president's Build Back Better plan,
including 4 Nobel Prize winners recently highlighted in an open letter.
17 Nobel laureates who have conveyed this will help address inflation.
14 Nobel laureates.
17, 14, 13, all of them full of dung. My next guest, however, is a doctor of economics, chief economist, and the Richard Astor Fellow at the Heritage Foundation. He is E.J. Antoni. How are you, handsome?
Sean, I am doing well. I got to say, though, as before hopping on here, I'm listening to your show, and I'm hearing your read for Donnelly Auctions. You're talking about stuff your grandfather left you that protects you against inflation. And here I am right now wearing my late grandfather's gold pocket watch that he got for himself when he got back from World War II. So I'm sitting here thinking he's talking to me.
I am talking to you, but think about this. Gold is at $4,000 an ounce. And years ago, when it broke $400, people said, oh, my word, this is we better focus on the economy. And now there is an entire group of morons in our country that want the government to spend more money, print more debt, ignoring all the signs of not just a weak dollar, but an economy with major cracks in it. When silver is $50, the poor Hunt brothers lost billions in fines for trying to make it go to 40. Look at what's going on here.
Well, exactly. And what's really scary is the number of people, Sean, who basically are telling us today that we need to do all of the things that got us here in order to fix the problem. In other words, throw gasoline on the fire. It's the same kind of garbage. You just played those clips, those Nobel laureates endorsing all of this runaway spending and everything by the government as if that's going to fix inflation. These people, they never learn their lesson, and yet we throw all these honors at them for essentially doing absolutely nothing. Meanwhile, if you do something, if you do, for example, bring peace to the Middle East, you can't get a peace prize for that. It's absolutely astonishing.
Well, it goes to show you how full of dung the whole system is. But when you see these guys win awards, they don't win awards for actually doing anything. They win awards for promoting the idea that collectivist finances, government-run, top-down economies are the answer. There's only been one that I know of that ever won an award because he actually did do something, and that's Milton Friedman, as he turned around Chile from a depression to a successful economy. And yet they ignore, at the turn, every benefit of Adam Smith's laissez-faire capitalism. So to me, when you're winning awards, it's because you're promoting idiots who lie to you and sell your lie. And that's what a Keynesian is. That's what government economics is. That's why they ignore the fact that just Joe Biden and Barack Obama added $18 trillion to the debt. And if you look at what happened to our debt from the year 2004, 90% of it is accumulated through government spending.
Right, exactly, Sean. And it's particularly scary when you see such a clear connection, for example, between what government is spending, overspending, right, and the amount of inflation that we have in this country. People will chalk up, the devaluation of the dollar to everything from supply chains to the war in the Ukraine. You name it, they will come up with another excuse. They will somehow figure out how all of these completely unrelated things are somehow related. They will find anything or anyone to blame for their failures other than themselves. And getting back to your point, Sean, on all these different academics, look, at the end of the day, follow the money. Who is financing all of this so-called academic research? Who is financing these folks? Who is paying for them to conduct this fake research, quite frankly? And
government.
They are all people who, right, exactly. They are all people who have a vested interest in the system continuing as is, not being reformed.
So here's the beauty of what Trump is doing. He's trying to thread the needle. You and I have talked about it, right? He's trying to grow the private sector while restraining the public. And that's fantastic up until this shutdown system, because when you look at the damage that could be done it isn't just that Obamacare fraud subsidies can continue and ignore the reality of what Barack Obama did to our health care, destroying the quality of it and driving up the cost exponentially, 400% in just premiums. But when you really look at what's happening, it's to promote and continue the COVID fraud money to the gangster areas like Illinois, like Chicago, like New York. That's what we're really discussing. What these idiots in Washington, D.C. want to do is continue to enrich the worst and the most corrupt areas by continuing the COVID money. They're not talking about removing it. They're talking about keeping it there and increasing it by the 3% kicker and the baseline budgeting that exists. And nobody talks about it, not even Republicans. The fraud is outrageous to me, isn't it?
Sean, 100%. You're spot on, as always. At the end of the day, what this fight is really about is finally upending the status quo. It's about saying, no, we're not going to do business as usual anymore, because business as usual has been, as you know, fraudulent. It's not really business. It's all a scam. I mean, look at the fit that the Democrats threw, for example, when we talked on your show months ago, when the big, beautiful bill fight was still going on. And there was that provision in there that was going to end, finally, part of the Medicare or Medicaid fraud, where hospitals get reimbursed for spending, except they get reimbursed at a multiple of what they spend. And that's why these hospitals say, hey, we love participating in this program, even though on paper it costs us money, because in reality, we get back from the government more than we actually have to pay in. And so, again... Mafia
hospitals.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly, Sean. And so, again, that's why I say this whole shutdown fight, and we saw the reductions in force that Russ Vought is rolling out today. This whole fight is about exactly that, upending the status quo.
So you want to hear what's amazing to me, right? Because you saw all these welfare roach hospitals in the Chicagoland area cry about it, but nobody said a word when Barack Obama implemented Obamacare, and we as a nation lost 50% of the hospitals and 50% of the doctors. It's amazing, the selective outrage. How dare you take away our mafia hospitals? Because these are the hospitals that were overbilling everybody and everything for treating the drug addict, the sloth, and the welfare roach. This is the big thing that needs to be exposed. But I don't hear anybody talking about what Barack Obama really did. He expanded Medicare to become the single-payer system that all of these communist morons wanted, because you can have imbecile doctors and mafia hospitals robbing you in perpetuity. And the good doctors left, or they became concierge medicine, or they went in a different direction that really is the separation of the quality of healthcare. And it never is talked about. That's what aggravates me. Why aren't the Republicans explaining what Barack Obama did to destroy and change forever the trajectory and the quality of American healthcare?
Why aren't they explaining it? Well, to answer your question, Sean, probably because most of them don't understand it. But I think you also just hit on something really important when you use the word quality. A lot of more, I guess you could call them conservative economists, they really ended up with egg on their face, because when Obamacare was going through the whole, sausage making process, if you will, through Congress, a lot of them had predicted, this is going to cause shortages. It's going to cause shortages of drugs. It's going to cause shortages of doctors and other kinds of health care, because you're going to put on all these price controls and you're going to embed all this other corruption and fraud into the system, and you're going to push literally millions of people onto Medicare. Like you said, Sean, it's their way to try to get us to that single payer system. And what actually happened, though, was not a reduction in quantity, but a reduction in quality. In other words, you still had the same availability in terms of quantity when it came to drugs or doctors, except the quality went down. We had to reduce the acceptable standards, for example, on generic drugs from China, so that we could make sure we were having enough coming in so that we wouldn't have shortages. But there was still a decrease in terms of overall consumer welfare. And that's something that I think we really have to continue to hammer home on.
All one has to do is monitor the deaths in the country before and after. and the life expectancy, which is outrageous. Here we are, we pretend we have the greatest healthcare. Really? You're better off in a third world country never going to a doctor than you are going to a Democrat doctor. That should be how we open up the conversation of it, because they just keep promoting more money, higher costs to more scumbags and frauds and idiots who keep destroying the quality of the healthcare system itself. And it's funny because the insurance companies, their profitability, the ones that stayed in business, skyrocketed along with the premiums, didn't it?
Exactly, Sean. It's exactly right. And so it's amazing how what all of these fraudulent what all these fraudulent programs do is they have this kind of barbell distribution, if you will. Who do they benefit? Folks on the really low end and folks on the really high end. So the welfare roaches, if you will, are the ones who get all of these different benefits. But who's actually making the profit? It's only the vested special interests who are already big and profitable and had a lot of money to begin with. That's how these schemes enrich those two ends of the income distribution, if you will. Meanwhile, middle America, the average Joe, is the one who's left picking up the tab. He's the one who has to pay higher hospital bills to make up for all of these costs elsewhere. He's the one who pays more for prescription drugs. He's the one who has to pay more for the doctor visit because it's harder for him to actually find a doctor who's willing to take his insurance, for example. Yeah. I mean, it's just absolutely amazing. It's fast approaching socialized medicine, as you know, Sean.
Oh, of course. It already is. It's always been the goal, and that's why I have an NDD, not an NDR. Not a do not resuscitate, a no Democrat doctor. I don't care where I am. Don't ever bring me to a frickin' Democrat. And if the paramedic is a Democrat, let me bleed out in a parking lot. Just let me go. I don't want to be treated by these imbeciles. And when you look at the fraud, and it's always about the money, always about the money. So I am shocked that it took this long. I believe the Republicans will cave, and I'm going to tell you what my indicator is. The very same scumbag Republican who was willing to have the entire country subjugated to a tax increase. The entire country, he was willing to do it unless the New York mafia state didn't get its SALT increase so that they could pretend that they're not the bust-out state they are, the corrupt bust-out. And that's Mike Lawler, a Republican. Now, he confronts jazz hands or Timu Obama, whatever you want to call Hakeem Jeffries, to pretend to put up a big argument. And it's nauseating to me to watch that, because these are two House members. It's already through the House. Why are these imbeciles putting on this theater and not educating their constituents as to why we're in this pickle? And if it doesn't change and we don't rip out this fraud, we're just pushing it to oblivion.
Well, Sean, because it's not their area of expertise. It's that people do what they know how to do at the end of the day. These politicians, what are they experts in? They're experts in getting elected. Sometimes they have success in the private sector before they get elected. So sometimes you might have, a successful attorney or a successful doctor or a successful business owner who then goes into politics. But for a lot of these folks, that's not the case. They were never successful in the private sector, and a lot of them were simply successful in politics. So they know how to get elected. They know how to be theatrical. That's all they know, and so that's what they do. They don't know how to educate, for example. They don't know how to explain these concepts. They don't understand the concepts themselves. Scarily, a lot of times they don't understand the legislation on which they're going to vote. They do what their staff advises them to do. And so that's why I think a lot of times you see this kind of political theater instead of actual good work being done, because they don't know how to do the good work. All they know is the theater.
Morons. Here's the other thing I want to mention to you, because I see I saw you on Varney. You looked very handsome. You had the gold with the gold on the handkerchief, very stunning. And I see you're going to go on sneakers with the $6,000 suit, whose name is escaping me right now.
Charles Payne.
Charles Payne with the $6,000 suit with the sneakers. I don't know how he does it, but he seems to be happy in it. I used to do factoring years and years ago when I was 21 years old. My first company was factoring. All right. And I am telling you something right now. When you start to see those factoring numbers and big name businesses start to sell their receivables, start to take a cut on their receivables, there's a problem in banking. You bring that up to them, and then if they ever ask if they want me on, you tell them, yeah, but I'm smoking cigars. Okay?
I will, Sean, and trust me, the weird fluctuations we're seeing in things like inventories, you're absolutely right. these are numbers we got to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I don't like it. There's somebody in the closet, and it isn't the boogeyman. In the meantime, I will always keep my eye on Heritage and always keep an eye out for you. EJ, you know you're one of my favorites. Thank you very much for making time for me. I know you're busy.
Thanks for having me, Sean.
Thank you, brother. We'll be back after this.